Good morning, children. In the last class, we discussed about the friction, some basic concepts about the friction, definition, the role of friction, then the factors on which friction depends, how friction arises between the two surfaces, in which surface the friction is greater and smaller. These things were discussed. Now, we are going to discuss the types of friction, because on the basis of their condition, the condition of objects, the condition of surfaces, we classify the friction into different types. So it is types of friction. Now, if we take a horizontal surface, on the surface we just put a block, cuboidal or cubical block object. Now this block is at rest on the horizontal surface. In this case, in this situation, here we are not applying any force on this block to move it, but only one force which is actually already acting on this object, that is gravitational force. With the gravitational force, the block apply force on the table, force on the horizontal surface. For that force, the surface also apply force. They balance each other. Other than that, no force is applied. So without applying any force on this block, we cannot say friction involves in between the block and the surface. For that, what we have to do, just we apply the force. We apply the force. And this magnitude of force applied on this block is not sufficient to move it. It still at the same position, remain at rest. By the application of force, still it is at rest. It is not moving. In this situation, we can feel that there is friction, because due to the force, in the first chapter, force and pressure, we discussed about effects of force. The force can move the object, the force can stop the object, change the direction, change the shape and size. Here we apply the force, but it is not changing its state. So then, what we can say? We can say that this force is opposed by something. Which is opposing it? Definitely the friction between the surface and the block, which acts in this opposite direction. Definitely that frictional force acts in the opposite direction. And here we can say one thing also. We apply the force, but it is not moving, but we can say it tends to move. The block tends to move. As we increase the force continuously, increase the magnitude of force continuously, at one stage, you may find the block start moves. Till then, the state beyond which the object comes in motion, before that, it is at rest. At the rest, at the rest, there is some friction, and that friction is known as static friction. It is static friction. So static friction is the friction acting between two surfaces when they are at rest. Here it is at rest, but it tends to move. Not moving tends to move. That is static friction. Then, if that force applied, magnitude of that force applied increases that limit beyond which the object comes in motion. Now the object is moving from one place to another place. Again, the friction is acting between them. When it is at rest, the friction is acting. When it is in motion also, the friction is acting between the two surfaces. You should not think about once the object comes in motion, you should not think that the friction is vanished. Still there is friction. And that friction acting between two surfaces when one is moving on the other, that is known as kinetic friction. It is kinetic friction. So basically the friction, static friction when they are at rest, kinetic friction when they are in motion. Static rest, kinetic motion. And the kinetic friction once again divided into two types. Here you see the block is moving. Then if we take a ball, if we kick the ball by applying force, the ball comes in motion, but the ball, it moves in two ways. One is the ball moves in a straight line. As it is moving along the straight line, it rolls about its axis also. It rotates about its axis also. And in this case, we say the ball is rolling. The ball is rolling. Here it is sliding. The block is sliding. Sliding and rolling. So on the basis of this, both are motion. Sliding is motion